Hello everybody and welcome to episode 65 of the Wildlife Photography Q&A. As you can see, we're not in the office, we're actually on assignment in Jamala Madikwe, situated in Madikwe Game Reserve in the northwest province of South Africa. And alongside me I've got Trevor,
Hello.
Mike, Krista working hard in the corner over there. I'm busy editing some content that will go live later today.
I was actually watching Netflix.
Guys, first of all, I mean, we've been here now for 2 nights. Tonight's our last night. We've done quite a few game drives. Trev, this is your first time at Jamala. You've been in Madikwe before.
Yeah.
First time at Jamala. Give us a quick sort of update. What are your thoughts on the lodge and also the location within Madikwe?
Having visited Madikwe quite a few times, I haven't been to this section. And obviously I know about Jamala. I did a bit of research before we arrived here. I looked at some photographs. And to be honest with you, I was blown away on arrival here. I think the lodge itself, as you walk into it, it just feels big, spacious. There's lots of seating areas. This deck itself out here is absolutely massive. And I think what is a big game changer here is the waterhole they've got in front of camp. Just in the time that we've been here, we've had buffalo, giraffe, impala, wildebeest, zebra, herds of elephants come down to drink. So even in between game drives, sitting here on the deck, which it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, you've got the pool on one side, the boma on the other side. It truly is spectacular. And when you go into your room as well, from the outside, it doesn't look that big.
Yeah.
But you walk into the room and you are instantly, the only word that comes to mind is wow. It is absolutely beautiful. It's the way that it's designed from the lodge and the rooms. I think that they've done very well to include a little bit of everything for everyone.
Yeah.
And in terms of its position, look, we've been on how many game drives now?
4, I think.
We've been on 4 game drives and we can pretty much go anywhere from here, which is nice. This morning was a bit of a longer drive because we went a bit further, but it gives you that flexibility in terms of whatever may be happening out in the field, and the local guides will know. If something's happening in the north, we can quite easily get to the north. If something's happening in the southwest, we can quite easily get to the southwest. So in terms of position-wise, I think it's situated perfectly.
Yeah. Mike, you've obviously been here before. You've hosted a couple of private safaris here. Good to be back.
It's always good to be back at Jamala. The big highlight to me is the food.
Yeah.
The food here is just phenomenal. And, I mean, Madikwe always stands true to prolific and great game viewing, regardless as to where you find yourself situated in the reserve. So it's really good to be back, see familiar faces, and just enjoy Nico and his team's food. It's just something that you honestly cannot describe.
No.
Trev used the word wow. I don't even think there's a word powerful enough to describe the food and the cuisine and the service here at Jamala. So yeah, it's lovely being back.
Yeah, I know there are quite a few questions that you guys have sent through about Jamala and about Madikwe, which we'll elaborate on a little bit more. But let's get straight into the questions that you guys have sent through. Thank you so much for sending them through. Question 1 coming up.
What you mean by the primary guide at the camp is a question that I don't understand too well, but they do have 3 guides, permanent guides here at Jamala. Lazarus, Mike, not me, different Mike, and KG, who is our guide, who is phenomenal, by the way. I do have a past experience with Lazzy as well, and Lazarus has been here for the longest period of time. He's been here, probably close to 10 years, I'd say. He's been here for a very long time. So if you mean, or what you mean by primary guide being the longest standing guide at Jamala, it will definitely be Lazzy. But all their guides are extremely well qualified. They all get up to, I know 2 of them at least are geared up to do safari walks. So they are extremely well qualified, very knowledgeable, and all 3 of them are great individuals. And your second half of your question is also very difficult, and I'm sure you guys would agree as to how long would you recommend one stay here. And mean, it depends on what your budget is. How long can you stay here, and how long can you take leave off from work? Because I would be more than happy to spend months here.
I think
if I can.
To answer, we've been here 2 nights. This is our 3rd night, and I still feel like I haven't had enough.
Yeah.
So I would think, obviously we do Madikwe trips as well in the other section, but I mean, you could quite comfortably do 4, 5, even 6 nights here. And I think a part of that also is the waterhole. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go out on game drive every single drive. You could spend a morning or an afternoon and just see what comes down to the waterhole. But it comes down to what I said earlier as well, is where we're situated. Because the reserve is actually very diverse. So through the duration of a 5-6 night stay, you'll get to explore a massive diversity, not only in the wildlife that you see, but also in the vegetation.
I think it's probably one of the few places where you go on game drive and you actually have FOMO of what you might miss coming to the waterhole. But I mean, I agree. I think you can either look at it like one of two ways. You can either spend a good amount of time here, so 6, even maybe 7 nights, spending time here, or what I often like to recommend to people is to combine it with other reserves. You can quite easily have scheduled flights going from here into the Sabi Sands, which will give you great diversity. I think Madikwe as a whole offers phenomenal game viewing all around, with one thing maybe lacking to a degree is leopard. I mean, look, you could get a leopard with a kill and then you see it every day for 3 days, but you could also go for like a week without seeing a leopard. So I like the fact that, combining it with another reserve in South Africa, either something like Twalu or somewhere in the Sabi Sands, like I said, easy scheduled flight in between, and then all of a sudden you've got a nice sort of 10-day or 2-week safari.
But I also think what you mentioned now with the game viewing is, and you talk about leopards and things, and you look at leopards' behavior, for example. By nature, they're shy and elusive animals. So I always feel when I come here and you're looking for leopards or you're looking for cats or whatever it is, it's got a very different feel, obviously, to the Sabi Sands, Sumavati, all of that. But it's got that sense of wild to it, which I absolutely love. Some people may love to see 5 different leopards in one game drive, every single game drive. But in terms of an experience point of view, having to go out there and to really track the animals that you're looking for down, that is an incredible experience in itself. But you're quite right. It's a great place to combine and create almost a 10-day trip between here and either Timbavati or the Sabi Sands.
It also depends kind of diversity. I think it also kind of depends, how many safaris you've been on. If you've kind of sort of been on a few safaris, you're just looking to get away. I love the fact that you can spend 6 or 7 nights at a particular place. You can really, like you said, you don't have to go on every single game drive. You can actually enjoy the lodge, enjoy the rooms, and not live out of a suitcase, living like 2 nights here, 3 nights there. And you really sort of, you form a bond with your guide, with the staff, and you also get a better idea of animal movements, when you...
Exactly. And I think that's what Jamala's done really well in terms of the layout of their lodge. With where we're sitting now, this viewing tower is one of their newest additions to the camp, and that sofa safari down just below us over here has been there from the very start. But that's been, if you may call it, like the center and the drawing card to the main area, because you can just sit there and you've got this beautiful view of this watering hole. And I can't back you guys enough when you say rather just skip a drive and spend your time in camp. And if you're going to combine different reserves, go to the Sabi Sands, see your cats, see your leopards, see everything you want to see, and then come here and end your stay here, not only with probably the most incredible food you'll ever experience on a safari, but just to take it easy, lay back and enjoy a sofa safari, because I mean, the game viewing we've had from camp has been really spectacular. And even
photographically, you did a segment of photographing from the deck here. There's so many different angles that you can get, and when it comes to photographing elephants with all the babies we've seen here, you're probably not going to get as good a viewing for like when you go on game drive as you would from the
with
deck.
Various different perspectives, with the low angle from the Boma fire pit area, and then this higher perspective to get the Dwarsberg mountains in the back there, and just the lay of the land in that scene as well. So they've really thought through the setup of this lodge extremely well.
Which is also different to a game drive, because if you think on a game drive, you can potentially reposition, but you can also potentially not reposition. Whereas here at camp, you have quite easily 10, 15 different shots, just thinking offhand, that you can get of one scene of elephants at the waterhole. Which is also quite nice. So you can play around, and because it's such an active waterhole, you can play around with the different angles and the different areas and see what works best and get a variety. You can get a massive portfolio just from shooting from camp, from the different views, the different heights, angles, and so on.
Yeah, and it's spread over a distance of 40 meters?
Yeah.
It really is incredible. And being on foot, walking between the fire pit, the sofa safari, and this deck, even though, yes, there's an electric fence between you and the animals, you don't see it because they've designed this really well. But that sense of being connected and closer to nature, walking along this deck with a massive herd of 40 to 50 elephant in front of you, really just makes the experience a lot more thrilling as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your question. On to the next one. All right, Hazy, thank you so much for your question. From a catering point of view, as Mike mentioned earlier, Nico and his team are absolutely phenomenal. It really is, one of the big sort of emphasis that Jamala have put on their camp, and it's a big tag that they carry, is the food that they deliver here is like really some of the best. Nico himself, he's the general manager, but he's also been a professional chef, I think, for about 20 years in many high-end lodges and hotels, and traveled Africa quite extensively from a food point of view. So they'll be to be able to cater for like any needs. They get their fresh produce on a regular basis. So I don't see that as being a problem at all.
Not at all. And that's not only limited to Jamala. I think most industries or most companies within the industry have realized that there are many people out there with either a vegetarian or vegan or health issue related diets, and they're more than willing to cater. And they've been in the game for a long time, and I've got no doubt. I mean, we obviously, none of us sitting here are following a vegetarian or a strict vegan diet, but let's say the vegetables that have come along with our meat have been phenomenal.
Very good.
So I've got no doubt that they will put on a really interesting and extremely tasty twist to a vegan or a vegetarian style diet here at Jamala.
I just think of the variety of food that we've had since we arrived here. There isn't a single meal that I thought I didn't enjoy. And chatting to Nico last night, I mean, the knowledge in that he has, and like you said, the extensive travel and things that he's done, I have no doubt that he would love to cook something slightly different.
An experiment,
An experiment and play around. And last night was great in the Boma, just to see how meticulous he was with plating of the food and how much pride he puts into his food. So I have no doubt, vegan, vegetarian, you're going to love it.
I would even go as far as to say, if you've booked and things, chat to Rodney, who's the owner, or Nico, the general manager, and give even preferences of particular meals that you'd like. You might have seen something or googled a particular meal. Send that through to them, and they'll be able to put it together for you, and I can guarantee it will taste incredible.
It definitely will. Definitely will.
It could be quite a nice challenge for them as well.
Oh, definitely, that's for sure.
All right, next question.
Mandeep Dharuti, thanks for that question, and it is an interesting question, seeing that we've spent some time over the past few days documenting Jamala and photographing from the camp between the safari activities. And one way in which you can find creative and different looking perspectives is to look at lodges that offer views and areas within the camp, such as Jamala does. This, to me, in all honesty, would be a good starting point, because in a 30-meter radius, we've got 3 different perspectives that you can make use of when it comes to your wildlife photography. You can get, well, if it's elephant, eye level or even below eye level from the fire area, From the sofa safari, you're kind of at eye level with elephants, and then from up here in the viewing deck, you've got a much greater, or there's a height advantage here where you get this really cool and very different looking perspective when it comes to wildlife photography. But out in the field, it can be quite challenging because not a lot of reserves allow you to exit the vehicle and get out of vehicles when in a wildlife sighting. But if you are with, and you double down to plains game and general game species, which usually don't get a major fright when people are on foot, or they don't potentially cause or result in a great threat to your life when you get out of the vehicle. But obviously don't try this alone. Be sure that you're with a safari guide and a professional in the area, and then maybe try and get out the vehicle, or vehicle positioning could be quite crucial. So look around for crests or ridges. If you know there's a massive herd of buffalo at a watering hole and you see there's a road up along a ridge, maybe ask your guide to go and stop up there. You shoot with a wider angle and get a bit of a different scene and perspective in that sense, because I think a lot of people get drawn to their larger focal lengths and they only sit at 400, 500, 600 millimeter, and that's the only shot they're managing to create. So I think it's important to not only look at the species that you're photographing and the subject, look beyond that subject, but also look behind you and look around you for different angles, views, and vantage points. I don't know what you guys would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think just another aspect to looking at what you've said now is social media. I mean, everyone does it. When you're scrolling through different pictures and images, you often just scroll and scroll and scroll, and then you'll stop and you'll look at an image. But like I often say to guests on the vehicle, when you stop and look at that image, really take note of what you stopped and looked at. What stood out to you? What did the photographer do in that image to make you stop and look at it? And it's not that you're going to go and copy that person, but I think by doing that combined with Mike, I mean, when you're out and you're in the field and you're looking around and looking for different opportunities, there's no harm in stopping and taking a photograph. And if it's a great photograph and a different photograph, then you've won. But if it's not a great photograph, you've also won, because you can look back at that image and, as opposed to deleting it, understand why it didn't work out and what you could potentially do next time. And especially with plains game and that is fairly common around, you're going to have multiple chances to try different angles and different shots and continue learning, even if it's subconsciously looking through your images, whether they're good or bad. Subconsciously you're taking in what your eyes being drawn to, the style or the type of picture that you want to take. And you'll start to obviously get better and better and start to develop an eye where you're looking for that unique shot that you either saw on social media or that you wanted to replicate in a similar way. And you combine that with, like what Mike said, you know, when you're driving around, there's nothing wrong with stopping and taking a shot. Whether it works, great. If it doesn't work, also great. It's a learning curve. It's all learning.
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating question. It kind of makes you think a little bit. I'd like to break it down into three things. So duration that you spend at a particular destination. I think naturally, you know, if you're coming to Africa for just a week, you know, you are kind of pressurized to try and, you know, find the big things and find the amazing sightings that you often skip past the impalas and things like that. The time of the year, I think, also plays a big part. You know, if you come during the summer months, during the rainy season, when people say it's not a good time to go on safari, you know, you get lots of baby impalas around. The vegetation is nice and green. It's lush. You've got flowers, so you can get creative. You know, if you spend time with impalas, to really sort of you know, create something a little bit different. What's the other thing I said? Duration, time. And also destination, you know, going to different destinations.
This is just water.
You know, like, think outside the box. You know, you've got opportunities for hides. You know, like Mashati's got some beautiful hides where you can get low angles on animals coming to drink. You know, kudus and things like that. But you can also, you know, go into national parks where you can self-drive. You know, to make it a longer safari. And so instead of spending a week or 10 days at a private safari lodge, you know, try and make it 2 or 3 weeks and do some of that in kind of like cheaper destinations, national parks, where you then use that time where you can self-drive to then, try and get creative with animals that you would usually drive past. And I mean, there's a million different options, from like slow shutter speeds, particularly with things like zebras. When zebras running to water holes,
Herd animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slow shutter speeds can be. I could spend the whole afternoon just doing that. Springbuck, if you go to a place like in the Kalahari or northern Kalahari, having the springbuck run, doing that with slow shutter speeds, panning them. There's a lot of different options, but I think the biggest thing that you need to do is to look at what images you've got already of all that general game, and give yourself a little bit more time so you don't rush when you're on safari to try and only get the big animals.
Definitely. And I think just adding to what you had mentioned there, Johanna, what Trev mentioned earlier about if you try it and it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I'm always game for something new, something different, something creative. And one thing that I really and personally love doing is using foreground vegetation.
Yeah.
And shooting through that to naturally frame it, give you that natural depth, beautiful color in the foreground. And on one of my most recent safaris this year, I'd hosted a guest who didn't want to do this.
Yeah.
Put the camera down, thinking, well, there's a bush in front of me. One very important thing to remember is when you're out there, is just remind yourself, if you never pick up that camera and take the shot, and this doubles down to what Trev mentioned, is you won't know if it works or not. So if you're not going to take that photograph, you're never going to know what you could have potentially created. And yes, there are moments where I take a shot and think to myself, well, that was stupid. Yeah. It's not stupid. It didn't work out well. And
but
maybe
you
learn from it. Maybe next time you capture a better looking and more appealing looking result. So I think one thing we can leave this question on is just pick up your camera and try. It's a matter of split seconds. You pick that camera up, take the shot. If it works, great. If it doesn't, don't.
Yeah. Krista, what do you think?
Yeah, great chat, Krista.
Listen, I really need to get my charger because I'm hotspotting off my phone.
Krista's very, very hard at work. I think that's it. Have you guys got anything else want to discuss? I think to sum it up, incredible stay at Jamala. I think one of the things that people ask, like in Madikwe, there's 31 lodges. How do you choose which lodge to go to? And yes, the price thing is could be a differentiating factor. But what I love about this is you've only got 5 rooms, so it's super exclusive. You've got, like we mentioned, the massive rooms, amazing water hole, incredible food, and then the exclusivity. I think it's worth every cent.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, you think of it, there's other guests staying here at the moment.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's only us.
Yeah.
You only really see them at mealtime. So it really does feel like you've got... Or at coffee. Anyways, let's not go there. But yeah, it is. It's a great lodge to visit, and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. For wildlife enthusiasts, for photography enthusiasts, food lovers, or even if you're not a food lover, this place is still going to blow your mind, and yeah, can't rate it highly enough.
Guys, that's it. Thank you so much for sending your questions through. Next week we'll be going live again from the Thorny Bush. We're going to Shimbalala. First time for me. First time for all of us, I think. Mike, you on safari pretty soon?
Yeah, so I won't be joining you guys in Thorny Bush. I head to Uganda for about 3 weeks, so yeah, that is a pity. I'm going to do some chimpanzee gorilla trekking, so yeah, really excited to get back out there, and I just look forward to doing what we do best.
Nice. Look forward to seeing what you get up to there. Guys, that's it from us. We'll see you again next week. My name's Johan.
I'm Trevor.
Mike.
Krista.
We'll catch you guys next week. Cheers.
Cheers.